All right, well, what we want to do today is we want to practice a little bit some of the things we've been working on in class this week. That's what this part in the notes is all about. So we've got just some extra practicing examples. This is the fourth or fifth page of your notes. Just go ahead and find that page, and let's go ahead and work on this stuff together. All right, so for the first one, if they want us to solve each equation by factoring. So can we factor this is the first question mark that we need to discover. So first thing you want to do is move this 72 over here, because with a polynomial you want them to equal 0. So this is going to be x to the fourth minus x squared minus 72 equals 0. Now, if you can factor without doing b's and c's, that's what you really want to do. So let's try to do that here. Big X. So negative 72 on top, and then negative 1 on the bottom. So what multiplies to make negative 72 that adds to be negative 1 would be negative 9 and positive 8. Now if you did that, you would have your factoring to be x squared minus 9 times x squared plus 8. Okay. Factor any more if you can, and I can here. I can make this x plus 3 times x minus 3. There's more factoring there. But no more factoring for this back part. Again, set it equal to 0. Now what you're going to want to do is to solve this, set each parenthesis as we did last week in class together. Set each part equal to 0. And then solve. Okay, so every part here I've got equals 0. So if I subtract over 3, I'll get x equals negative 3. Add over 3, x equals positive 3. And then how do you solve this? Remember, you want to get x squared alone, so subtract over 8. So you'll have x squared equals negative 8. And then you'll square root each side. And this is where your whole i's come in and all the stuff we've been doing recently. So x equals... Now remember, when you solve an x squared, it's always plus or minus. Now you can break up the square root of negative 8 into the square root of negative 1, square root of 4, square root of 2. So square root of 4 is 2, square root of negative 1 is I, so this is going to be 2i, square root is 2, and we have it, along with the 3 and the negative 3 that we had from before. Okay? Now remember, the power kind of determines how many answers you're going to get. If I have an x to the fourth, I'm going to have 1, 2, 3, 4 answers. The plus or minus there is counting as 2 answers. And then with these other 2, we have our total of 4. Okay, so we've got that first one taken care of. Let's move on here. Now try letter B. All right, so how will I factor letter B? Well, I can take out an x from all the parts. X times x squared plus 5x plus 6. Okay, I'm going to continue factoring, so I'll big X what's left over there, 6 on top, 5 on the bottom. That requires a 3 and a 2. All right, so our factors are x times x plus 3 times x plus 2. Okay, and we're going to set that equal to 0. Now, if we set each part equal to 0, out of this first part, you'll get x equals 0. Out of this second part, x plus 3, if I subtract over 3, I'll get x equals negative 3. And if I subtract over 2, I'll get x equals negative 2. And there's your answers there. All right, the third one here, letter C, going to be a little bit more involved. It's a cube pattern, so our x is our A, and 2 is our B. Remember, we do AB, this is the cube pattern, times A squared AB B squared. Same sign, opposite sign, always positive. Okay, so we've got A minus B, so this is going to be x minus 2 times, and then we're going to have x squared plus 2x plus 4. Okay, that's the proper factoring for a cube. Now this part is easy, x equals 2. Now as I told you, this back part is never ever factorable. So you're going to have to solve with quadratic formula. So your A is 1, your B is 2, your C is 4. I'm going to plug in a quadratic formula to do that. So here we go. X equals negative B plus or minus square root B squared minus 4AC all over 2A. Okay, I'm worried I'm going to run out of room here to do this. All right, but let's see what we get here. So we're going to have X equals negative 2, because B is 2, plus or minus the square root of 2 squared minus 4 times A is 1 and C is 4, all divided by 2 times A, 2 times 1. Okay, I'll continue up here. So this is going to give me negative 2 plus or minus the square root of 4, 2 squared is 4, minus 16 divided by 2. Okay, so this is going to keep going. Negative 2 plus or minus the square root of negative 12 divided by 2. Now the square root of negative 12 can be broken down. That can be broken down into the square root of 4 and the square root of 3 and the square root of negative 1. So we're going to have 2i square roots of 3 out of that. Square root of 4 is 2. Square root of negative 1 is I. So you're going to have negative 2 plus or minus 2i square roots of 3 over 2. Now if you can divide all the outside numbers by 2, which you can, I can reduce all of those. This becomes negative 1 plus or minus I square roots of 3. Okay, again, the 2 goes into all those outside parts. So we reduced it to get there. So we've got 2 that we got way back here, and negative 1 plus or minus I square roots of 3 as our other answer. These are pretty tough. You may decide you want to come to tutoring on Monday, get a little bit of help, and hopefully get this a little better figured out. Okay, let's do D, and then we'll take a little break. All right, so for letter D, we have x to the 4th minus 64 equals 0. This is a difference of 2 squares. It's x squared plus 8 times x squared minus 8. Okay, again, both of them are squared terms. We can do, because of the minus, a plus or minus situation. Now, if we could factor those more, we would, but we can't. So what we have to do from here is just set them equal to 0. Subtract over 8, so x squared is going to equal negative 8. Square root each side, and x is going to equal plus or minus, okay, square root of negative 8. You can break that up into the square root of negative 1 times the square root of 4 times the square root of 2. Square root of 4 is 2. Square root of negative 1 is I, so it's going to be 2i square root of 2. And right now there are 2 answers. Again, I get that 2i by doing square root of 4, which made 2. Square root of negative 1 was the I, plus or minus 2i square root of 2. Now for the second part, x squared minus 8 equals 0. I'll add the 8 to the other side, so x squared equals 8. And then I'm going to square root each side to get x equals plus or minus. Now I've got to break down this square root of 8 into square root of 4, square root of 2. Square root of 4 is 2, so 2 square root of 2 is going to be the other answers. And again, notice you have 1, 2, 3, 4 answers, and x to the 4th should have 4 answers. Okay? All right, take a little break, and then come back, and we'll do the second half of the notes here. Pretty tough questions coming second half.